Many thanks to DayZ Podcast, Pandemonium, Lion Lost, Jerry, and Wolves of DayZ for making this video possible. For the longest of time, DayZ players have known that mushrooms, fruit, and small stones spawn into existence when a player is nearby, but what many more don't know is that you can use these spawned items to track player movements around the map and even know if a player is camping in your area. So in this video we're going to learn how to track players and campers using a frickin' plum, and why you should be extremely paranoid if you stay in the same location for more than 15 minutes. The three types of player proximity spawned items are mushrooms, fruit, and small stones. Mushrooms spawn commonly in forests and fields in a variety of flavors, which are all exactly the same in nutritional properties, which gives them the exact same energy when baked as a 100% can of tactical bacon, and 10 times the hydration of the tactical bacon too. Tactical bacon gives you 50 hydration, a mushroom that's baked gives you 500, making baked mushrooms the third best food in DayZ after cooked meat and cereal. Fruit spawn under the three types of fruit tree in DayZ, apple, pear, and plum, which unfortunately all look very similar, but apple trees do have a 2D apple.jpg on the texture of the tree. Plums are the best fruit, but they're all quite good for energy, with mushrooms being superior as they spawn more often and give very good hydration too. Mushrooms and fruit have a chance to spawn as raw, rotten, or dried, which appears to be around 50% for raw, 25% for rotten, and again 25% for dried. If a raw fruit or mushroom spawns, it would decay and become rotten in 12 real-life hours, but all fruit, mushrooms, and vegetables in DayZ have a 50% chance to become dried when transitioning from raw to rotten after these 12 hours are up, with dried food of these three types never decaying once dried, so dried food that isn't meat is the best for long-term food storage. Finally, as for the small stones, they spawn on train tracks and hiking trails, with their use being almost vital to any fresh spawn because they can easily be turned into a knife. Simply place a small stone in your hand and find a big boulder and you have yourself a stone knife. Mushrooms, fruit, and small stones appear to spawn when players are in proximity or close to them, but in fact they are always there in the background, being spawned in and out of existence in their spawn locations, kind of like an unseen heli crash site, spawning and despawning whether or not a player is nearby. This technically means that there's no such thing as a proximity spawned item in DayZ, they just appear to be proximity spawned, because the only difference between a small stone spawning and a heli crash site spawning, for example, is that the heli crash appears to spawn for you at 1100 meters, but the small stone appears to spawn for you at just 100 meters. So if you go within 100 meters of a small stone spawn point that is currently active, it will spawn for you a small stone within 30 seconds of you entering its bubble, and won't despawn unless you go outside of its 100 meter bubble. Of the thousands of spawn points that can spawn a fruit, mushroom, or a small stone, 25% of them are active at any one time because they spawn once every 15 minutes and despawn 5 minutes after spawning, and then 15 minutes later again it will spawn again, whether or not a player is near it. If a player goes within 100 meters of an active spawn, like I said, it will trigger and appear within 30 seconds. But because it can potentially stay there for 5 minutes after you've left the area, other players can track your movements around the map by following the breadcrumbs of mushrooms, fruit, and small stones that you've left behind, even if they're several minutes behind you. This essentially makes every player in DayZ a snail that leaves behind a trail of slime behind them with their 100 meter radius asses, and makes travelling trails very dangerous if someone is in the know and they're a few minutes behind them. They will see stones constantly. For the person leaving the breadcrumbs behind them, there is absolutely no way to avoid this from happening. There are no gyms in DayZ to reduce the size of your 100 meter radius snail looking ass, and these spawns are littered everywhere across the map. There are thousands of them, with forests being the most dense for these spawn points. So the best way to not leave breadcrumbs is to run across open fields, which itself is even more dangerous to do, and mushrooms can spawn in fields too near these hay bales, just not as frequently as forests. For the person doing the tracking, you yourself might trigger the spawning of active spawns should you come within 100 meters of the spawn point, but more players does not mean more items will spawn. One player can spawn as many as 600 players in the same location, so if it's already spawned in, another one won't spawn on top of it if you activate that spawn point too. Now, because we can see items on the ground up to 165 meters away as standard in DayZ, it means that there is a Goldilocks zone for viewing these so-called proximity spawned items that you yourself have not spawned in. For For example, if you are 130 meters away from a spawned mushroom that you yourself have not spawned in or been within 100 meters of, there is a player within 100 meters of that mushroom, or there has been a player within 100 meters of that mushroom within the last 5 minutes. But if there are many mushrooms or fruit spawned into one location, it means that there is a camper in that location. If there is a small stone at a spawn point, another small stone won't spawn there, as there is only one place for a small stone to spawn at a small stone spawn point. However, with mushrooms and fruit spawn points, many mushrooms or fruit can spawn at one spawn point instead, unlike small stone spawn points. Now, mushroom and fruit spawn points spawn a new fruit or mushroom every 15 minutes a player is within 100 meters of it, like I said, and will despawn that item 5 minutes after, like I said. But what you might not know is that items cannot despawn if a player is within 100 meters of the item, and that applies to all items in DayZ, essentially ever increasing the number of items at mushroom or fruit spawn points until the player moves 100 meters away from the spawned items. So basically, if there is more than 2 or more fruit or mushrooms very close to each other or at the same spawn point, someone is most likely within 100 meters of that spawn point and has been there for more than 15 minutes, which means that staying in one area for more than 15 minutes will alert other players that you are in the area, giving you a disadvantage over them because they will certainly be on high alert, but you might not be. Now, I'm not the only person that knows this stuff. Many players have known for a very long time now, but after discovering more about this, and it only took me a few hours to do so, I wanted to shine the light on how this all works to get your feedback and how you guys feel about this being in DayZ. Do you believe it needs to be changed? And maybe some of the geniuses out there can give the devs some feedback on how to spawn mushrooms and fruit a little bit better, because I for one believe being betrayed by a couple of mushrooms is a bit too hardcore survival for me. But I don't speak for everybody, so get into the comments and let me know your opinion. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.